Cooperation. At an extraordinary meeting of GCC foreign ministers to discuss tensions with Iran, Saudi Arabia says it may take further measures against its neighbor. 39 people are killed in an airstrike in the province of Idlib as the U.S. envoy to Syria holds talks in Damascus with the foreign minister to advance preparations for peace talks later this month. And the German chancellor warns migrants they could lose their right to asylum after dozens of migrants were arrested for mass assaults on women on New Year's Eve. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Joude paid a brief visit to Riyadh for talks with Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir as part of consultations between the two countries in light of the latest developments and the fallout from the Iranian escalation against Saudi Arabia. The visit was a follow-up on the latest contacts that His Majesty the King held with Saudi King and Deputy Crown Prince, and also came ahead of a ministerial GCC meeting Saudi Arabia hosted and an Arab League meeting in Cairo tomorrow. Al-Jubeir said that consultation and coordination between Jordan and Saudi Arabia are ongoing at all levels and in a manner to serve their joint interests. Gulf Cooperation Council countries condemned what they said was Iranian interference in the internal affairs of Saudi Arabia and the region. In a statement after an extraordinary meeting in Riyadh called to discuss tensions, the Ministerial Council strongly denounced the act by Iran and stated that Tehran carries the responsibility for terrorist acts, referring to the aggression against the Saudi embassy and consulate in Iran. Saudi Arabia also had asked the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, of which Iran is a member, to convene an extraordinary meeting to discuss the aggression against its embassy. Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir said his country was looking into additional measures to take against Iran.
We are expecting that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation will take a firm stance similar to the one taken by the Gulf Cooperation Council. We also hope that tomorrow the Arab League will take a strong position regarding the Iranian aggression both at the embassy and the consulate, but also Iran's interference in internal affairs of the countries in the region and its support of terrorism.
In Syria, humanitarian aid will be delivered to the besieged Syrian town of Madaya and 2 block villages in the northwest as early as tomorrow morning. The World Food Programme said a convoy will carry 1 month's worth of food and medicine for the 40,000 people trapped in the rebel-held town. The United Nations said the Syrian government had agreed to allow access to the opposition-held town near the border with Lebanon, where it says there have been credible reports of people dying of starvation. People there are reported to have been starving to death, eating pets and grass to survive. A similar operation for the village of Kifraya and Fo'a said the north are due on Monday. An airstrike in Idlib province in Syria killed at least 39 people when it struck a courthouse and an adjacent prison. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the attack on the town of Marat al-Nu'man in Idlib province also wounded a large number of people, many of whom were in critical condition. The building was struck with 4 missiles and the number of dead could rise, but it was not clear whether the strike was carried out by Syrian or Russian jets. On the diplomatic front, Syria said it was ready to participate in Geneva peace talks, but said it wanted to know who would take part from the opposition. Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim, in a meeting with UN Special Envoy to Syria, also demanded a list of groups that would be classified as terrorist. But Syrian rebels and opposition politicians have expressed doubts over whether the peace talks will begin as planned. Here's more.
Syria's government has told a UN envoy it's ready to begin talks to end the country's civil war. Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim met with UN envoy Stefan de Mistura in Damascus on Saturday to discuss the conference, which will bring together government negotiators with representatives of the opposition groups trying to overthrow Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The talks are scheduled to begin January 25th in Geneva. De Mistura has been talking with the various parties scheduled to attend.
And after this, I will continue my trip also to Tehran. So it's premature to make any comments. Thank you very much anyway.
Do you feel optimistic about the meeting?
My job is to be always optimist, as you know very well.
But others are finding that optimism difficult to share. Syria wants first to know which of the groups fighting the government will be allowed to attend. Rebels are demanding that the government stop bombing civilian areas, release detainees, and lift blockades. The outlook has been further clouded by increased tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which back opposing sides in the conflict. But Western countries are pushing hard to end the fighting, which has inundated Europe with a wave of refugees. 1 million more Syrians will be displaced by year's end unless diplomats find a way to halt the conflict.
In Iraq, and 2 weeks after declaring victory over Daesh terrorists in Ramadi, the Iraqi military continues to face pockets of resistance and explosive traps in clearing operations. Foreign special forces have also been carrying out raids on Daesh ahead of an offensive planned late this year. Ramadi has been hailed as an important victory for the Iraqi military, and Baghdad has designated Mosul as the next target for Iraq's armed forces. Palestinians took to the streets of Sa'ir near the West Bank town of Hebron in the funeral procession for 6 Palestinians shot dead by Israeli soldiers. 3 of the Palestinians were killed on Thursday after allegedly trying to stab soldiers in the occupied West Bank. A 4th man was killed in an Israeli checkpoint near the city of Hebron, also under the pretext of stabbing an Israeli soldier. And in the West Bank city of Jenin, Palestinians held funerals for another 2 Palestinians killed early today by occupation forces who claim they tried to stab soldiers at a checkpoint. Meanwhile, Israeli forces demolished the home of a young Palestinian in the town of Surda near the West Bank town of Ramallah. Muhannad Halabi was shot dead by occupation forces last week after allegedly stabbing and killing 2 people in Jerusalem's Old City. Witnesses said Israeli bulldozers began demolishing the 2-story house past midnight after forcing the family to evacuate. The municipality of Surda announced that it would name a street for Muhannad Halabi. The Yemeni government said that peace talks due to be held on January 14 would most probably be postponed beyond that date. Government spokesman Rajah Badi said the announcement by former President Ali Abdullah Saleh that he would not take part in the talks and the lack of Houthi commitment to carrying out their promises of releasing prisoners were amongst the reasons behind the push for postponement. The warring sides held the latest round of peace talks in December, but failed to find a political solution that would end the conflict, which has killed nearly 6,000 people. The United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen has suggested Geneva as a location for holding peace talks. Armed men shot dead a police officer and a soldier while they were in their car in the Giza area on the outskirts of Cairo. A security source said several moving and fixed checkpoints were deployed in the Munib area in order to crack down on the attackers and catch them. Daesh terrorist group claimed responsibility for the attack. Yesterday, 2 armed assailants attacked a hotel in Egypt's Red Sea resort town of Hurghada, wounding 3 foreign tourists. Migrants who commit crimes could lose their right to asylum, said German Chancellor Angela Merkel, toughening her tone as crowds gathered in Cologne angered by mass assaults on women on New Year's Eve. The Chancellor added that the assaults represented new tasks and challenges that had to be addressed, with a furious debate raging about her immigration policy, which saw 1.1 million asylum seekers come to Germany last year. Nearly 24 asylum seekers were among those suspected of carrying out the attacks, heightening tension over immigration and fueling criticism of Merkel's refusal to place a limit on the numbers of migrants entering the country. Today in Cologne, some 2,000 people protested for an end to violence against women, carrying signs bearing slogans like "No violence against women" and "No means no, it is the law, stay off of us." The women banged pots and blew whistles as they rallied outside Cologne's famed Gothic cathedral. Star Wars enthusiasts flocked to the theaters in Beijing as The Force Awakens, the latest episode of the blockbuster movie, was released in China. It sold an estimated $33 million in tickets on its first day in China, the world's second largest film market. The Force has become the highest grossing film of all time in the United States and Canada, grossing $800 million at overseas box offices. Globally, it has taken in $1.5 billion so far and is already the fourth highest grossing movie of all time after just 3 weeks in release. Creator George Lucas sold the franchise to Disney in 2012 for almost $4.5 billion.
The dark side. A Jedi. They're real.
The Force.
Thousands took to the streets of the Australian town of Parkes in a parade to celebrate what would have been Elvis Presley's 81st birthday. This year's festival theme was Presley's 1963 classic film Fun in Acapulco, where many wore Elvis-style jumpsuits or Mexican-inspired outfits, capes and domed wigs. For 5 days in early January, Parkes swells to over double its normal size, with Elvis fans from around the world. Lionel Messi netted his first hat-trick in 10 months as Barcelona swept aside struggling Granada 4-0 to climb above Atletico Madrid at the top of La Liga. Neymar added a fourth goal 7 minutes from time. Barca, who have a game in hand over their main rivals, now lead on 42 points, with Atletico a point behind and Real Madrid in third spot. Real are now playing Deportivo La Corona, Zinedine Zidane's first game as coach. Following the success of last year's edition, the route for the 2016 Tour of Spain was announced today, looking to replicate that success. The 2015 race was seen by many as one of the best in recent years due to the ongoing competition that went down to the wire. For the 2016 edition, the race will begin in the Galicia region of Spain before passing through the Basque region in the early stages. The Queen stage, seen as the most challenging in the entire race, will be the 195-kilometer stage 14 that runs through France, finishing in Abesque. And finally, a look at the weather. Cold conditions continue in most regions across the kingdom tonight with light variable winds. Freezing is also expected in most parts of the country. As for tomorrow, relatively cold weather prevails with low clouds and southeasterly moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect fair and partly cloudy conditions, while winds will be northerly moderate and the seas calm. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. At an extraordinary meeting of GCC foreign ministers to discuss tensions with Iran, Saudi Arabia says it may take further measures against its neighbor. 39 people are killed in an airstrike in the province of Idlib. as the UN envoy to Syria holds talks in Damascus with the foreign minister to advance preparations for peace talks later this month. And the German chancellor warns migrants they could lose their rights to asylum after dozens of migrants were arrested for mass assaults on women on New Year's Eve. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.